BBOR Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia at heart and from around the globe. And hello everybody, today is Friday, another Cooper Friday. Welcome to the show. How's everybody doing? On Fridays this year, I've been talking to you guys about D.B. Cooper, the man responsible for the only unsolved skyjacking in U.S. aviation history. And in this episode, I will be discussing the D.B. Cooper suspect, William Wolfgang Gossett. And D.B. Cooper not only committed a skyjacking, but he also parachuted into the night with $200,000 US, and he was never seen or heard from again, to everybody's satisfaction. Of course, some believe that D.B. Cooper was in fact very public and vocal about all of his escapades. But in this episode, I will be discussing Wolfgang Gossett, and it's one that one of you guys recommended in the comments section down below, and I am a total newcomer to the D.B. Cooper case. Other than this series, I've done maybe 1, 2, or 3 episodes on D.B. Cooper previously on BlackBoxOnlineRadio, and I wanted this to be presented as a fresh take on the subject, a new set of eyes on the D.B. Cooper case. But if there's anything that you're curious about in regards to the D.B. Cooper mystery, you can put your ideas in the comments section down below. For larger things, you can send them to me at BlackBoxOnlineRadio@AOL.com. But as far as other subjects outside of the suspects, we're talking about things like the involvement of the FBI, the involvement of the CIA, alternative theories, theories involving accomplices, things of that nature. Also, there are an enormous amount of other true crime stories that are connected to D.B. Cooper, which I'm sure I'll be discussing in future episodes. But one thing that I noticed about Wolfgang Gossett as a D.B. Cooper suspect is, in around 2008, there was somewhat of a splash in the media, and there were lots of news articles coming out saying, was this man D.B. Cooper? And really, the things that I'm going to be reading to you in this episode are mostly coming from that time frame around 2008. And I don't want to use the term media firestorm because I don't believe that it was that big, but I just thought that that was rather odd. Now, Wolfgang Gossett was not alive at the time. He passed away in 2003, but there are some comments that I would like to make about media and press coverage associated with true crime cases at the end of the episode, so please stay tuned. And again, if you want to follow along with all of these D.B. Cooper episodes, you can hit the like button and subscribe. It really helps out the channel. Firstly, let's get an introduction to D.B. Cooper and William Wolfgang Gossett. And I said we are going back in time. We're going to be looking at all types of old-fashioned internet creations such as Weebly, Wix.com. I mean, I haven't seen these names in years. There's a Weebly on D.B. Cooper where it says, William Gossett was trained in the Marines, Army, and Air Force. He confessed to his 3 sons, a Utah judge, and a friend in Salt Lake that he was D.B. Cooper just before his death in 2003. His sons say that he showed them the key to a box in Vancouver that contains the lost ransom money. Other than greatly resembling the composite sketches the FBI released and being qualified to survive the parachute jump, the FBI has no further evidence linking Gossett to D.B. Cooper. Now, I've said this in some previous episodes, but I do want to talk about it, about how I do think that it is some valuable evidence to look at the composite sketches and find a resemblance, because I think the composite sketches in the Cooper case are very accurate. Now, the thing that comes up all the time is the eye color. And Eric Eulis even talks about this, where it's first stated, well, first people might think D.B. Cooper had brown eyes, but then maybe the comments could be interpreted as maybe D.B. Cooper had brown eyes. And we have to bear in mind that D.B. Cooper was wearing sunglasses for a rather large portion of the time, or definitely his eyes were covered. We even have the famous composite drawings of him and that. But with William Gossett, I mean, he's born William Gossett, changes his name to Wolfgang later on, and for a while it's just a nickname, but he legally changes his name to Wolfgang Gossett. He is someone, as you heard, who was in the military, and he was in multiple branches of the military, also serving at the United States Embassy in France, where he learned the French language and became a fan of the French language D.B. Cooper comics, Dan Cooper comics, and D.B. Cooper got on the plane and used the name Dan Cooper, and D.B. Cooper was a name that was falsely given to him by the media. But there's an article on Wixsite.com. As I said, we are really going back in time, and this is written by John S. Craig, William P. Gossett and the D.B. Cooper Case. The identity of infamous skyjacker D.B. Cooper has eluded the FBI since he jumped from the back of a Boeing 727 with $200,000 somewhere over Woodland, Washington on the night of November 24, 1971. Galen Cook, an attorney who has been investigating the case for years, plans to write a book and has released the name William Wolfgang Gossett. Information concerning Gosset as the elusive skyjacker was released in the Depot Bay Beacon, an Oregon newspaper, on May 28th of 2008. Cook is also investigating possible witnesses to the parachute jump from the jet, the possibility that D.B. Cooper sent letters to the newspapers, and the analysis of found Cooper money. The FBI has shown an increasing interest in Cook's work, and suspect Gosset was told in August of 2011, and I think I misread something there. The FBI is showing increasing interest in Cook's work and suspect Gosset. Period. End of sentence. Cook was told in August of 2011 by the FBI that Gosset is still a viable suspect, along with another unnamed suspect. And that's the problem with these FBI responses. They're always so vague, and it's almost as if they are intentionally stirring the pot and trying to get people riled up, and another unnamed suspect, and everybody is going to be thinking, oh wait, I know who that is. Well, that has to be this person, it has to be that person. It's almost a form of trolling, in my opinion. Ever since that night, the FBI has investigated over 200 suspects, but none of them have ever been confirmed as the skyjacker by the FBI. The FBI has publicly stated that they do not believe the skyjacker survived the jump, and the case code name has been called Norjack, which remains officially unsolved, though the FBI may have partial fingerprints from the elusive skyjacker left on a cocktail glass or other sources. Now, it was my understanding that they were not actually able to obtain the partial fingerprints from the cocktail glass because it was improperly handled, but as I said, I'm a newcomer to this. And then in 2001, the FBI obtained DNA of the skyjacker from a clip-on tie that he left on the plane, and possibly from other sources like cigarettes that the skyjacker smoked. Now, gotta divide this into two things. I've talked to you guys on Cooper Friday before about how, yes, it has been reported that they do have possible DNA on the clip from D.B. Cooper's tie, which he left behind on the plane, but it is my understanding, again, that they do not have any evidence from the cigarette butts. D.B. Cooper smoked 8 Rowley cigarettes on the flight, and I don't think they have any DNA from that. But here is what is written on Wix site about William P. Gossett as a D.B. Cooper suspect. He was born William Pratt Gossett in 1930 in San Diego. He served with the U.S. Marines, Army Air Force, and then the U.S. Army. He served tours and was decorated for action in Korea and Vietnam. He was a survivalist and experienced parachutist. He was an ROTC instructor and retired from the Army at Fort Lewis, Washington in 1973, 2 years after the skyjacking. Gosset died in Oregon on September 1st of 2003 at the age of 73. The FBI has not eliminated him as a potential suspect, and he is the only major suspect that has not been eliminated, though the FBI has known of him for years. Well, in 2024, that doesn't mean anything at all. I mean, there are just countless D.B. Cooper suspects that are going to be widely discussed. As I said, a lot of this news coverage came from 2008. He often spoke of the D.B. Cooper skyjacking, and he told one of his wives that he could write an epitaph for D.B. Cooper. William Gossett told his cousin Charles Gossett that he knew all about D.B. Cooper but could not talk to Charles about it. According to Gossett's son Greg, William Gossett told his 3 sons that he was the skyjacker. Cook says that he confessed that he was the skyjacker to a retired Salt Lake City judge and a close friend he worked with in Salt Lake City at the public defender's office. The judge told Galen Cook in 1977 he walked into my office, closed the door, and said that he thought he might be in some trouble and that he was involved in a hijacking in Portland and Seattle a few years ago, and that he may have left prints behind. He said that he was D.B. Cooper. I told him to keep his mouth shut and don't do anything stupid and not to bring it up again. Did Gosset turn over any incriminating evidence to the judge concerning this case as it relates to him? Greg Gosset contacted Cook in late 2007 and provided information that allowed Cook to investigate William Gossett as the real D.B. Cooper. Greg says his father kept numerous files filled with D.B. Cooper articles. Greg Gossett claims that his father was always strapped for cash and had a gambling problem. He says his father showed him his wads of cash just before Christmas in 1971, only weeks after the skyjacking. He believes he stored some of the cash in a Vancouver safe deposit box and may have blown much of it at Las Vegas casinos, though none of the recorded serial numbers of the cash have ever been found, with the exception of the money that was found in in or around Tina Bar in 1980. On the Coast to Coast radio show on November 6 of 2011, a woman claiming to be William Gossett's niece said she remembers her uncle having an unusually large amount of money during Christmas of 1971. William Gossett worked at Weber State College, and became a private detective who specialized in money fraud, cults, and missing persons. He assisted and was commended by the FBI for his help rescuing a woman from the Bhagwan Rajneesh, his compound in Antelope, Oregon. And when I read that thing for the first time about Bhagwan Rajneesh in Antelope, Oregon, I could only think about Dr. Bhagavan Antle, who became famous from Tiger King. He was a little bit famous before, though. Side note, ended. In the mid-1970s, Gosset began wearing a goatee and a mustache and changed his name to Wolfgang, or Wolf. And I read in a different source that he actually got the name Wolfgang earlier on, and he just went by the name Wolfgang or Wolf Gossett. And then one of the things was this event, though, where he's participating in the rescue of the woman from the Bhagwan Rajneesh cult, and that inspired him to change his name. There's a particular story about that, but I don't think that's too important. The long story short is he was born William Gossett and changed his name to Wolfgang Gossett officially in 1988. He became a priest in the Old Catholic Church of the Salt Lake City Diocese. There are only several incidents where Gosset seemingly tried to hide his identity. When serving as an ROTC instructor at Weber College in Ogden, Utah in the early 1970s, Gosset never mentioned to his fellow Army buddies he had served 10 years with the Marines and that he had parachute training. And I just have to stop right there. No matter what you think about that, no matter what anyone says about, okay, is this guy like hiding something or not. The fact of the matter is he served in multiple branches of the military, has parachute training, resembles the physical description of D.B. Cooper, and I think that it would be premature to say that everything is matching up. But these are some strong points, and not to mention that this guy is allegedly confessing to people. But because I've been doing this Cooper Friday segment, I really have to be honest with you. These confessions might not mean too much, because I did a whole episode on Walter Recca as a D.B. Cooper suspect, and not only did Walter Recca confess to his friends that he was D.B. Cooper, the confessions were recorded, and you can hear Walter Recca's own voice talking about how he was D.B. Cooper and how he planned the hijacking and how he's saying stuff like, the whole time I wasn't sure if I was going to go through with it or not. Trying to recall all the events and the things that he was thinking about before the skyjacking, and I think it's all nonsense. I think it's all hogwash and baloney. I mean, I think that Walter Recca made it up, or at the very least, someone encouraged him to make it up, or that at the end of the day, the Walter Recca confession is not accurate. Now, somebody like Wolfgang Gossett, did he actually tell his children that he was D.B. Cooper? Did he actually talk about all these things regularly? Did he actually show them the cash box with the money from the heist? I find the story about him gambling away the money in Vegas to be rather unlikely, as none of the money has been recorded. This is something that I also think is rather weird, and as I said, I'm going to have to do an episode talking about the FBI and the CIA, and was this thing just some type of setup or something like that, or is there some type of not exactly darker and more sinister motive going on, but is there some type of misleading thing going on from the FBI and the CIA? And I mean, the problem with it, though, is in terms of doing an episode, it's going to be all questions and no answers, because it's like, well, is this what's happening? Question mark. I'm not sure, but I might have to do some of that, even though it will be very speculative. Now, as far as gambling all the money away in Vegas, you would think that some way, somehow, certain bills would be turned up in circulation, certain things would be flagged, and certain things would be connected back to Las Vegas some way, somehow. I mean, I suppose it's possible. I think that people would already be connecting the dots in a few ways and thinking, oh, well, he gambled some of it away at a casino, and then the casino was in cahoots with some type of organized crime syndicate that moved it out of the country, this, that, and the other. But you'd still think if some of that money, $200,000 in $20 bills, was in circulation, that it would have shown up by now. That's why I think that there's something a little bit misleading going on about the official narrative. And the fact of the matter is, even if, hypothetically, even if he did confess that he was D.B. Cooper, Other people have also confessed that they were DB Cooper, and it turns out to be untrue. You cannot always believe what people say, especially in this particular instance. I don't doubt the stories of his children, but they are hearsay confessions nonetheless. Moving onward. So we have something here that's also on Wix site where it says that a man was interviewed that knew Gosset and that he had previously served for 10 years with the United States Marine Corps, and none of them knew that he was jump rated with the Marine recons. Gosset kept all that to himself, which is unusual in the military world. I do think that is unusual as well, that somebody would not just talk about how for 10 years they served in the Marine Corps. Gosset didn't want them to know that information, and they didn't know it until I told them. They were surprised as hell, and that is a direct quotation there. I mean, yeah, it's like, I think anytime somebody hides 10 years of their life, you get a little bit suspicious. I mean, sometimes people just don't want to share things because they don't want to answer questions about it, or they don't want to appear to be different or something. But, I mean, I guess we'll just get back to the article here where it's going to be talking a little bit more about DB Cooper. The skyjacking started with a flight from Ogden to San Francisco to Portland, where he hijacked the plane. This would have to be in the theory involving Wolfgang Gossett as a DB Cooper suspect, flying from Ogden to San Francisco and then to Portland. Then there's the hijacking, and it was flown to Seattle where he demanded the ransom and the parachutes. He parachuted from the rear exit of the Northwest Orient jet near Portland. He didn't have to be at work or at home, theorizes Cook. He had the level of skills and the ability to plan the entire thing with military precision, and to not only parachute from the plane, but to survive. The reason he avoided detection on the night of the jump in the following days was because searchers were looking in the wrong state. D.B. Cooper cleared the Columbia River and landed in Oregon, where he made his way back to the airport and returned to Utah. It took him 3 days in and 3 and out. So, I mean, my immediate response is there, yes, this guy does seem like he would have had the knowledge and the capabilities to have been D.B. Cooper, and he's someone who had paratrooping experience and didn't like to talk about it, yet he told his family that he was D.B. Cooper, allegedly. Those are some strong points. And when I was doing the episode on Ted B. Braden as a D.B. Cooper suspect, I was talking about some comments that were made by Staff Sergeant Mike Davis when he said that jumping at night is something that is almost exclusively done by the military. It's something that a military individual would have done, but not exactly a civilian, because civilian jumps are mostly done during the daytime. In jumping into cloud cover in the rain, these are also things that a military person would think about, because that would destroy the evidence. That would destroy things like impact zones and even footprints. I mean, let alone jumping into a river. I mean, all types of things could be lost there, and I mean, the exact location of D.B. Cooper's landing is heavily disputed. We do not exactly know where D.B. Cooper landed. Some people think that there was just misinformation that was shared by the FBI because they wanted to put the real D.B. Cooper into a false sense of security. And then there are other people who think that just, D.B. Cooper didn't land near the Columbia River. He landed near the Lewis River. Other people think that he actually landed at Tina Bar. So, I don't think everyone is in agreement that D.B. Cooper landed in a single location. But I actually do have a lot of things that I want to talk about in terms of how the media presents these types of stories. And it appears that there was a tabloid article that went out in the publication from his hometown. Well, it's Depot Bay, Oregon, which I have since learned, in the past 2 days, that Depot Bay is home to the world's smallest harbor, and the publication is called the Depot Bay Beacon, which seems more like a small town newspaper, but the article that they shared about Wolfgang Gossett called Was This Man D.B. Cooper, and it looks like a tabloid that could sit next to Weekly World News or Globe in the supermarket, and sometimes the media catches on to things. Sometimes a certain individual becomes very popular and discussed in a lot of news articles, and it doesn't mean anything at all. I talk about the Zodiac Killer and Jack the Ripper here on Black Box Online Radio. And when I did the suspect episode on Bill Menser and the Zodiac Killer mystery, I found that a lot of the news articles were from 2002. And around that time, there was again, just somewhat of a splash in the world of media when people are writing all of these articles in similar publications, just saying that, was this man Bill Menser D.B. Cooper? And in 2024, at the time of this recording, that theory is really not widely accepted by many people at all. And it goes so far beyond that. I mean, even going back the days of Jack the Ripper in the 1800s, there was a publication called The Sun that put out an article in 1894 talking about a man named Thomas Cutbush, more or less labeling him as Jack the Ripper, or maybe it's going in somewhat of an inquisitive way, stating that, is he a very strong Jack the Ripper suspect? And it was that article from The Sun that prompted the Inspector Melville Macnaughton to write the famous Macnaughton Memorandum when he actually lists the three suspects that he views are more credible than Thomas Cutbush, and they were Aaron Kosminski, Montague John Druitt, and Michael Ostrog. Two of those are absolutely ridiculous suspects, in my opinion, but I talk about that on the Wednesday show. And as far as just how the media responds to this, sometimes a suspect becomes popular in these unsolved mysteries, and it means nothing. It is just a flavor of the week. It is just a song of the summer. It is just a piece of news that gets discussed for a little bit and then it fades away. Now, almost everybody who's listening to this recording has had the opportunity to live and experience the media firestorm that was created in 2021 when all types of news outlets across the United States and around the world were saying that the Zodiac Killer mystery had been solved and that it was Gary Francis Post, and he was the Zodiac Killer, and investigators had made a public announcement. But then again, that also turned out to be something that was, well, definitely not true. Gary Post was not ever determined by the FBI to have been the Zodiac Killer. They meant a group of independent investigators. And just because the media is sharing this type of information, and there are a bunch of news articles that are going around about how this guy, Wolfgang Gossett, William Pratt Gossett, changed his name to Wolfgang, could have been D.B. Cooper, it doesn't mean anything at all in terms of the likelihood that he actually was D.B. Cooper. It's not a strike for and it's not a strike against. It just has no significance of any kind. But the final thing that I want to share with you is, again, just about media coverage. And I found that there's so many articles about William Gossett that are covered in publications that I wouldn't have expected to look at when I was reading about D.B. Cooper. One of them is ucatholic.com. Yes, uCatholic spelled with just the letter U and then the word Catholic. Did D.B. Cooper become a priest? And that was one that actually came out only a couple years ago, not in 2008. And there's also one from Ultra Running Magazine, and they have a very big expose on William Gossett, and it's called Run D.B. Cooper. Again, this came out 2 years ago, not from 2008 as well, but I mean, I just thought that these things were quite surprising. But, you know, You Catholic Magazine, I guess they found something that they wanted to talk about in the world of the Cooper vortex, so to speak. And it's actually somewhat of a detailed article, but it doesn't go on for too long. And I'm just going to read to you guys some of the things from this particular article. According to Galen Cook, Gosset confessed to a couple people, his old boss, a retired Salt Lake City judge, and a close friend that worked in the public defender's office. And here's the quote. He told his wife, Elaine Hetchel, that he would write D.B. Cooper's epitaph. He was capable of it. There were others that said he always talked about D.B. Cooper. There was all this third-person narrative, but he never told the people closest to him, I did the job. Now, this will be disputed because, as we've heard, it does appear that he actually did say some things about being D.B. Cooper. But as far as these details on his life, it does say some things, though, about how he was just working with the Diocese of Salt Lake City, and at that time, he had legally changed his name to Wolfgang Gossett. And this is another quote, though, from Galen Cook, where it says, the evidence is really strong. I feel we've got the right guy. He had the level of skills and ability to plan the entire thing with military precision, and not only to parachute from the plane, but to survive. And I don't doubt that, actually. I wouldn't take that away from them. I wouldn't even say that that's untrue. But did he actually do it? Is he the person that we should be looking for? ucatholic.com, and the next one was Ultra Running Magazine by Jared Beasley. and he fought in Vietnam and Korea. He was a Mormon turned Catholic priest who went by Bill or Wolfgang or Wolf. He was an ROTC instructor, an exorcist, and paranormal researcher. He was a radio host, he was a runner, and many believe that he was D.B. Cooper. For Greg Gosset, he was dad, and two distinct memories have stayed with him. One was following behind his father's flowing robes as Mass ended, a part of the old Catholic Church. Incense hung heavy in the air with the priest's chambers as his father pulled his frock over his head, and underneath he had a pair of running shorts and sneakers. Well, they had to find some way to include this into ultrarunningmagazine.com. Then there's the time his father took him downstairs to show Greg something for his 21st birthday. He opened a locked file cabinet and pulled out a composite sketch of D.B. Cooper, and he said, "Who's that look like?" So, I mean, I think that would fall under the category of being an indirect confession. I mean, if somebody's going to say something like that, who does this look like? Who's that look like? I mean, I would. And this is more or less what YouCatholic.com was talking about. Not exactly saying I did the job, but an indirect confession. William Pratt Gossett was never on the FBI's radar until 2003 when he died and Greg spoke out. The Bureau's interest was piqued and went full speed on Gosset. Through hypnotism, Greg remembered moments from his childhood, detours of his distant father, heading to the Wasatch Mountains in search of something he'd lost. He and his mother would drop him off at the North Ogden Pass where he double-timed it, first along a trail, then scrambled into the bush and vanished. He was a special forces type of guy. Okay, now here is a giant interjection. I have followed a lot of true crime stories on Black Box Online Radio over the years. I've also explored some other things about UFO abductions, other stories about just people who believe that their parents were criminals, and I don't think too highly of people recalling things under hypnosis. I have a bunch of hypotheses about how this works, and this isn't stuff that I can present in some type of scientific paper or anything, but I began to wonder if these things that people are recalling under hypnosis are either invented memories, that's number one, are things like daydreams, or are things like fantasy and delusions, as well as things like childhood imagination. And I really began to wonder with the UFO abduction stories that I had been looking about, well, maybe the hypnosis actually works and people are remembering things, but it's just some type of fantasy world that the kid was playing in when they were 7 years old. And then when people remember very specific things about, oh yeah, well, my father took me into the mountains and he was looking for D.B. Cooper's money. I'm paraphrasing, stuff like that. That again is some type of desire blended with facts, and it's not necessarily a real memory. So I've also think that people can sort of use hypnosis in a way to convince themselves of things that are untrue, but like they might actually convince themselves and they start living out something that is based on falsehoods. And I know it sounds very complicated, but the long story short is I do not believe that all of these types of memories that people have recalled under hypnosis are 100% accurate. I think that just is a big way of putting it. And the final thing that I would just say is, what do you think about Wolfgang Gossett as D.B. Cooper suspect? Father Wolfgang Gossett, that is. Bill Gossett. William Pratt Gossett. Please put your ideas in the comment section down below. Would you like to respond to anything that I've discussed in this episode? You can leave any type of comment you want in the comment section. You can also hit the like button and subscribe one more time. It really helps out the channel. And if you want to support any of these efforts, and if you want to support Black Box Online Radio, you can go through some of the links in the description box, and one of them is for BuyMeACoffee.com. BuyMeACoffee.com/BlackBoxNed88, and that allows you to make a donation or contribution to help support the show, and anybody who makes a donation will get a shout out on Zodiac Monday. And that's all for me now. Anybody can write the show at BlackBoxOnlineRadio at AOL.com. You can also get me on Facebook. My personal Facebook is in the description box, and there is always BlackBoxNed88 over on Instagram, and I'll see you over there. Until next time.